Hello and welcome to another panel on Spotlight Indie's big indie weekend. Right now we're doing the Legacy of Dragons panel, and I am super thrilled to introduce and have a load of Dragony authors with me. Just to quickly note that at the time of recording, Fraser Armitage, our part-time robot, full-time nerd, but he is also part-time ill at the moment. We wish him a very speedy recovery, and they're going to have to put up with me hosting the panel instead. So let's dive in. And we'll introduce our lovely panelists. I'm going to go around clockwise from the people that I can see. So if you could give everybody an introduction to yourself, and I think also say what your favorite thing about dragons is. Try and keep it brief because we've got a lot of time to talk about dragons. So don't worry, we'll get to it. But your top thing about dragons. So JE Hannaford, if we could start with you, please.
So I'm JE Hannaford. I'm author of The Skin and the Pact, which are nominally about Selkies, but do contain dragons. And also Gates of Hope, the Illyrian Gates trilogy, which contain emotion-based space dragons. My favourite thing about dragons? Everything. The scales, the size, the power, the mythology, just everything. Like, literally everything. I
think it's worth me pointing out that I didn't mention that I was going to ask you that before. So they've really sprung this on all the panelists, what your favorite thing about dragons is. But lovely, yes. So pleased to have you here, Jenny. And I love the emotion-based, emotional space dragons as a sentence. That's great. I love it. I mean, I love them anyway because I've read the books, but I love it. And LL MacRae we have with us as well. Sorry, I picked a brilliant moment to ask you that. Just as I waited, just as you were going to take a drink. Sorry.
No, it's like when you're eating at a restaurant and the waiter comes to ask how your food is, just as you've taken a massive bite.
Yeah, I'm sure they just wait in the shadows just before.
No worries. Thank you so much. So hi everyone. My name is Lauren. I'm a British fantasy author. I write under the name LL MacRae. I write mostly about dragons. It's literally my tagline on my business cards. I echo JE's obsessive passion about dragons. I do love everything about them. For me, dragons really represent the ultimate in escapism, which is why they kind of go hand in hand with fantasy for me. It's they're something that don't exist in this world, but they do exist in secondary worlds, and they're the kinds of places that you want to escape to, where there are magic, there's powers, there's dragons, there's all these sort of wondrous fantasy feelings that you used to believe in when you were a child, and I kind of retain that into my 30s, and I don't think I'm ever going to grow out of that. So yeah, it's just pure escapism for me, and just that kind of sense of freedom.
Fantastic. Jordan Loyal Short, could you please give us your introduction and your favorite thing about dragons? We're covering a really broad gambit of what people's favorite things are, but I love it.
There's a lot of cool stuff about dragons, so
exactly.
I'm Jordan Loyal Short. I'm a fantasy author. I've written one complete grimdark series called the Dreadbound Ode. That's kind of like a Ragnarok retelling, sort of, but much more grimdark, if that's possible. I'm also the author of an ongoing series called Dragonreich. That is, if you love the idea of punching dragon Nazis and hunting for treasure and that kind of stuff. The first book, City in the Dragon's Eye. And it's also kind of humorous and fun-loving. I'd say if I had to pick something that's my favorite thing about dragons, I love just that they have like big aura. I just love the idea that something is like so intimidating and overpowering and awe-inspiring that you see it and you just like shut down because it's so overwhelmingly impressive that you just your brain can't process how cool it is.
Yeah, I mean, how cool it is to read it on the page, and then how terrifying it potentially would be to see that in person. And finally, we have Emma L. Adams. Emma, would you like to give us your intro and fave thing about dragons?
Sure. So I'm Emma. I write as Emma L. Adams. I write a lot of my books have dragons in them. Not quite all of them, but like I've pretty much gone from like dragons as cute sidekicks to dragons as terrifying wild animals to humans who can shift into dragons. So I've really kind of covered the bases. And I think my favorite thing about dragons is that you can pretty much do anything with them. Like there is this idea of what a dragon is, but it just seems to be everywhere in like all cultures worldwide, just this constant presence. And I've been obsessed with dragons since I distinctly remember wanting to get a pet lizard at one point. So we ended up with a goldfish instead. So I was about 7 or 8, but yeah, so it's always been there.
Brilliant. So a lot of enthusiasm for dragons here, which is very good. That's what we're here to talk about. So we've got a few sort of topics and questions that we want to try and cover, and the first one that is on the list is, I think I know the answer to this one, but is to maybe stir some controversy early on. Do you think any other mythical creature is ever going to be able to challenge the dragon in speculative fiction? You know, the dominance it has. It's very ubiquitous, as you say, Emma. You know, you kind of say the word dragon and people will instantly know what you mean. You know, there's variations in there. But do you think there's anything else that might ever hit dragon levels? Anyone want to jump in, or I can volunteer? Lauren, do you want to?
Yeah, I think dragons are almost, they're a trope so synonymous with speculative fiction. It's almost like the chosen one or the underdog or found family. It goes so like hand in hand with that. It's not just that it's a fantasy animal. I think it's just, it epitomizes everything about fantasy. So I think it is gonna forever be that peak of the mountain. That being said, tropes are there to be subverted and changed. And so I think that a lot of other fantasy animals are starting to kind of get their time in the spotlight with recent books. I get a lot of dragon fatigue from readers who are like, oh, I really like fantasy, but I'm done reading about dragons. So as soon as you say, oh, but I have griffins or phoenixes or selkies or something else, it kind of piques the interest a bit more. So I think that other creatures will rise, but never quite to the same height, because I think what a dragon is kind of like gone beyond the physical, you know. It's just part of the bread and butter and the fabric of the genre.
Absolutely. I saw some nods there. So Jenny, it looked like you were agreeing with that.
I am. I think that there are authors who are doing incredible things with non-dragons. And that those particular series, if I pull out, for example, Skandar and the unicorns in Skandar are some of the most amazing fantasy creatures I've seen written in a completely new and novel way. I mean, they're undead, mythical, falling apart, skeletal, and at the same time also absolutely beautiful, depending upon how things pan out. They are superb. My son is hooked on those more than a lot of people were hooked on a certain other series in the past at the same age. And they are brilliantly written, and you read those and you don't miss the dragon, because there is enough fantasy with the way that it's written. So I completely agree with Lauren, and I would add that I don't think dragons are just a trope of genre. I mean, I am a stereotype. I am Welsh. Dragons are in me. They are my soul. They are my blood. I have dragon scales tattooed down my back. I am a dragon, honestly. You're all just looking at the human version. But I think they are deeper than just a fantasy trope for a lot of people and a lot of cultures. And I think as a result of that, they are more than just fantasy. So I think it makes it very difficult to turn around and say, oh, fantasy without dragons. But I don't know that it could ever be necessarily knocked off its perch as the King of Kings, but the Griffins, the other stuff, it's good to see other things. It is hard to get dragon burnout, but dragons plus something else, excellent. Still get the dragons, but there's something else there as well. Yeah. Sorry, I'm a little obsessed.
We're all a little obsessed, at least, right? I think to build off actually what Emma said in her intro is that there's so much room to explore with dragons, and having dragons that are something slightly different than what we've seen before, that every time some other thing tries to knock the dragons off their perch, they're going to morph into something else and add a new facet that we haven't seen before. And so no, nothing is going to take the dragons down.
Yeah. Emma, I'm assuming. Again, I don't want to assume, but I feel like you were nodding along with a lot of that as well.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. Like, I think there's just something enduring about dragons, and and they are pretty associated with the fantasy genre. I mean, yeah, I feel like a lot. There's a lot of fantasy without dragons. I've written books without dragons. There's a lot of other like mythical creatures, and like just fantasy like elements. But I think dragons, it's so versatile. You can do pretty much anything with it for that reason, which means like they can be the center of the story, or they can be like a small like background sort of thing, like a small like feature of the world. So I think it's gonna be tough to shift them from that pedestal. But I do enjoy reading like other like mythical creatures. I just feel like dragons are the one thing I just don't get tired of. There's plenty of other things, but not dragons.
Yeah, as you said, yeah, I think they are very well established, and I think you see a dragon even if it's not the main focus of the story, and I think you kind of get a sense of that just instantly kind of provides a spark, I think, to what's happening in a story as well. So you've also touched there, Emma and Jordan, pulling attention to it as well about the different things you can do with dragons. So one of the next things you wanted to kind of look at was dragons like throughout history and culture, and what like excites you about the like evolution of the dragon archetypes, or the things that different things you can do. And if you've got like authors or creators who are taking that kind of blueprint and doing something different, or that kind of thing. So Emma, you've already touched on this. So did you want to dive on that?
Yeah, there's lots of things that you can do. You can almost write, like kind of wild animal sort of thing, or have them like intelligent, like equal to humans, or just definitely not human, but also kind of a equal thing. This is on my brain. Like I've been rereading the Inheritance cycle, Aragorn, and I'm revisiting my childhood. So like the idea of I always liked in that series how like the dragons are like clearly not human, but are also like intelligent in a way that doesn't feel like weird. Like I don't know, they just don't feel like humans like pretending to be something else or something like that sort of thing. I guess it's quite difficult to do. What else? Yeah, and then I guess you can just have a dragon as like a cute animal sidekick or something like that. I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but I'm sure someone has done it. I'm pretty sure I did it in one of my series.
Yeah, I mean, you've given an example there anyway, of the Aragorn stuff. And as you say, it's the knowing that they're intelligent, but not having, not just having, it's just, you're saying it's a dragon, but really it's just a person in a, in a costume or something like that. Jordan, is there anything you sort of think about with that, the different ways to take them on, or have you got any examples that you would want to point to?
I can't think of anything oh wait, now that I actually think about it, one of my favorite parts about Dragonreich series is that it's definitely a different way of looking at dragons, where it's got a lot of historical parallels to the World War II era, and there's a group, the kind of like the bad guy cabal. They are dragon supremacists, where they have a bloodline that draws power from dragons, and if they draw too much, they can get tumors and start to kind of turn into malignant, cancerous dragon creatures. But their ideal is they want to transform themselves into what they consider like the master race, which is dragons. So there's a lot of not dragons disguised as humans. They're humans that are actively trying to turn themselves into dragons. And it was really fun to kind of like play with it as like a metaphor for white supremacy, or, all that kind of awful stuff. But as far as other series, I love, like, for instance, what was it? Evan Winter, he wrote Rage of Dragons, which was really great. The best like training montage. That's a separate thing, but just the way that they deal with dragons, they're wild animals that they are controlling, just like felt like pretty similar to a lot of stuff, but it just had just like a pivot that was just enough to make it feel really distinct. I also really like R. Scott Bakker. There's not really a huge dragon presence, but they have like kind of aliens have fallen to this world sort of, and they're like slowly turning into like mutating into these different things. And there's a dragon called the Raku, and like one of the most epic dragon fights ever. So if you've ever read the Prince of Nothing series, or if you haven't read the Prince of Nothing series and you like grimdark, you should definitely check it out, because it's got a badass dragon in it.
Excellent. Lauren, you write about dragons, like full stop. As you say, that's on your business card. I think it's on the tablecloth that you've got when you go to events as well. Is that right?
Yeah,
or you definitely got dragon on there. So there's a lot clearly that you can find in the dragon archetype and things like that. So what kind of things do you like to pull on? I would also assume there's different strands that you like to look at in different ways.
Yeah, definitely. I think as far as like an evolution perspective, I'm just glad that we now have stories where dragons aren't just like the bad guy to be killed by some hero so he can, save a princess. It's like it's evolved so much more beyond that now, and you have dragons in all kinds of flavors. Like I love when they're kind of just part of the world, like just the regular ecosystem. They're just an animal, probably at the top of the food chain, but with a few like caveats. So you've got like in Anthony Ryan's The Waking Fire, you've got different species of dragon which have their blood has different properties that people can then take and use. And there's about a whole kettle of fish there about, what you do with power and drugs and all of those kind of allegorical things. And the Dragons of Terror series by Brian Naslund is also really cool because it really kind of takes dragons as part of the ecosystem like to the next level. They've got like migratory patterns and there's like different breeding at different types of the year and the types of people that they hunt, like the different kinds of prey animals. And I think kind of looking at it from, I don't want to say scientific because they don't exist, but like looking at it from a realistic, as far as your world building goes, way is kind of cool. It's great when they're kind of gods and they are a bit other, so they're other to the people as much as they're other to us. But I really like when they're kind of really built into the bedrock of the world and they feel like the world would not be complete without them, and then kind of exploring that in all those different ways. That's what I really, really like. And from a culture perspective, depending on where the author is from and where the world is, inspired by and based on, you can get so many different varieties of that, and like kind of taking bits from this culture, that culture, and just building something really unique.
Yeah, I think that sort of versatility of the world is really important, just generally in fantasy. And I think especially, as you say, with when you're adding things that don't exist in real life, you have to think about it a bit more, which leads me nicely to go and talk to Jenny about this question, because I know you do like to think about things very deeply. With your Gates series, you've thought about that a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll just throw that out to you as well as the previous question as well.
Well, I mean, as far as like where other people are going and things, one of the things that I haven't specifically heard mentioned by the others is that I think we're very, very much that there's a head. I can't work out if I need to take this out. So I keep wiggling. I might end up taking it out in a minute. It's just the wrong height for my mic. So them being into the world and being other is absolutely brilliant. But I also love when they're completely not. When they're so other. I mean, Kirsten Espinosa is there as one where they come in through other means that I don't want to spoil. You've got Miss Percy, which are so integral to the world, and yet they're not, that they're basically cats, which was like your domesticated dragons that Emma was talking about. We have the completely different use of the dragons. I know we're not an indie with it, but when you get to Temeraire and you get them as vessels, as transport mechanisms instead. And obviously what Lauren's doing with the way that her dragons are completely integrated into the way that her world is absolutely gorgeous. And I love the way that that's put together as well. And I do think they have to be so other that their impact completely ruins the planet or has a massive impact on it, or it has to be completely integrated. Yeah. I think they have to kind of fit into one of those boxes. They either have to be there, or when they arrive, there is a problem. In some way or another. They have to be part of the system. And yeah, I appreciate that. And then I go off and I do something completely bonkers and make my dragons. I have one set of dragons in one book, which are, again, integral to the fabric of the world. And you don't necessarily even realize you're reading about dragons for one of the books. And then the second one with the Gates series, as you say, the Gates one, they are the magic. Their magic is like their background behind the books is that it's almost like it's radioactivity. So the presence of their magic is what causes the mutations that causes everything else to balloon out from there. So they are that strength, that power. They are that other that they change the world that they are part of. So yeah, and hence they are magical space dragons, because they both are and they aren't, because without the emotions that create them, they do not exist, or they die, or they're reborn, and various other things like that. So they are able to do things that a physical beast cannot do whilst holding physical form if there is sufficient power for them, kind of.
Well,
So yeah, which is a huge number of spoilers. So sorry about that, but we're talking about dragons and dragons doing crazy stuff.
Spoilers, but also a lot of intrigue if anybody hasn't yet read your books. So hopefully they will. I mean, I think we're doing that with all of your books, to be honest. There's a lot of things coming out that I think if you haven't already gone out and got them, you should be doing that. Like, you can pause this and go and do it and come back. It's fine. So that also touches on the next kind of topic we had to talk about, which is the challenges that writers commonly face with adding magical creatures. So obviously we have been talking specifically about dragons in this one, but what they might need to do to make that feel realistic, to add something magical, whether it's dragons or not, into the world, and what sort of things that they might need to avoid. Maybe skipping a little bit over the fact that we'll assume that they're biologically kind of possible, or if there's other things they might need to consider to make sure that they're at the top end of that believability scale. Jordan, could I throw that to you first?
Yeah, I think that it's something to keep in mind is whenever you're trying to write dragons is that they bring a lot of stuff with them. And if you want to write about dragons, you have to be aware of that. And you have to, if you say dragon, just the word dragon, like, okay, somebody's got a picture in their brain of what you're talking about with just that. And not just that, but there's also, as Jenny and probably everybody else here so far said, there's a lot of cultural stuff that comes along with that. And so you can't just take this and start writing about dragons and not be aware that there are like tropes and conventions and stories that people have previously heard that they're bringing to the story along with them. And so you either have to be aware of that and work with that material and either keep it as is or reshape it based on those ideas. If you want to subvert these tropes, you have to be aware of them, and you have to intentionally play with those aspects, because they're definitely going to be there, and especially fantasy readers, because as fantasy readers, pretty much everyone who's pretty into the genre has read a lot of books that have dragons in it, and they either are going to want to see something new, and they're going to want you to take this existing putty and reshape it into something that's novel, or they're going to want to see like the coolest parts of all of this stuff. So you either have to change it into something new, or you have to like feel out what it is about dragons that people really love and then highlight that kind of cool stuff.
So talking about doing it, taking those sort of strands of different things. So Emma, you've written dragons in a few different ways.
Yeah.
So how do you approach that? Like making them different, but also, so we'll use the word realistic in each work, making it fit neatly into the world each time.
Yeah, I guess it kind of depends what sort of world I'm writing about. Like with if there's like other mythical creatures already there, they'll feels like they fit would fit without like I mean, there's always some level of suspension of disbelief with readers. Like if they don't accept, like if they can accept the dragons, they'll accept like anything else, pretty much. But then with my most recent series, Death's Disciple, with that one, I kind of wanted to go with the sort of realistic-ish approach, more logical than realistic, as in like there are other creatures as well as dragons that like look like they could exist like alongside them. There's like sea serpent sort of equivalent that like lives in the sea, and then so the war dragons are massive, but then there's like smaller versions of them. Everything is like reptilian. I was thinking dinosaurs basically. That was kind of what was on my mind when I was coming up with that. And the dragons themselves are like, they don't breathe fire, but they obviously do fly, and biologically maybe not, but let's just ignore that. But like the rest of it is it's kind of has to just feel believable. Like I wanted it to feel like consistent within that world. They are giant wild animals, and they're also like in like an ecosystem which they weren't originally from. So, and then the army basically disbanded the flight division before the start of the series. So there's these wild dragons like flying everywhere and like destroying crops and stuff, and it's all mayhem. So I like try to like mention stuff like that to kind of as a reminder that that they're big animals. They make an impact. They cause a lot of chaos. Even though humans like have managed to sort of tame them, they're not tame. They will bite their rider. Like, you have to wear gloves. You have to don't touch the mouth. Yeah, the claws. Yeah, there's just injuries all the time. It's a very bleak world, but that's how I went along with the realism thing.
Absolutely. So to throw it over to you, Jenny, as well. Next, I'd love, obviously, more generally your thoughts on this. But are there any other things that people should avoid, or like how they can make sure that the science is, as accurate as possible?
This is something I run workshops on. So
yeah, yes, exactly. See, this is, I knew, that's why I threw it over to you. I think, is it your...
Yeah, I'm an ecologist. So if the world doesn't work, I am going to put your book down. Quite simply, if I get halfway through, you've put a creature in it, and that creature is doing stuff that should be impacting the rest of the world around it, and there isn't enough extra in there, I'm probably going to put it down because it's going to annoy the heck out of me. So it does need to have a connection. If you've got this creature in, it's affecting food webs, it's affecting chains. If it's affecting one thing, it's affecting something else. It's affecting something else. If it's naturally in the environment, then the food supply has to be there for it. There has to be sufficient food and there has to be sufficient supplies of something. If it is a wild animal type dragon, it has to have sufficient actual supplies to sustain it. And the number of dragons also has to be realistically matching the amount of food available. You can't have 50 dragons living on a farm. It's just unsustainable. There has to be a serious amount of food supply. And when you're thinking about large numbers of dragons in one place, where's that food coming from? How are they being supplied? How's the rest of that coming into place? And the same comes with just about any and every fantasy creature. If you're going to drop something in to a world that's based off a Western world or wherever else it is, you have to ensure that all the rest of the pieces are in place. For me personally, I mean, I appreciate for lots of people suspension and disbelief of magic is enough. But if it is far enough away from actually being able to work, for me, that knocks it too far away. Because then I'm lost from the story. Because instead of worrying about the protagonist, I'm like, but how have they fed that dragon? And I appreciate that that's a particular thing. But how have they fed it? Why isn't it just eating everything it's been left with? Why is it so hungry it doesn't need to eat? Is its metabolism slower? Is there a reason why it's not doing that? And where's the dragon poo go? So, you're going to have creatures of that sort of volume in a massive collection somewhere in a weir or whatever you want to call it. Where's the dragon poo going? It's still there, even if it's a slurry heap somewhere off the side. There are things that I think tend to get forgotten. And when you're building animals into worlds of any sort of fantasy variety, they still have to, you have to go, oh, they don't poo, right? Okay, weird, but hey, what else do they excrete? Or you have to come up with sort of the whole picture, even if it's mentioned in half a line somewhere in the way that shows that you've actually considered where the rest is going. I don't need a detailed food plan. I don't need a food web, but I need to be able to see that they fit. And that, I think, goes for any fantasy creature anywhere. And if you're not sure about it, one of the things that I always suggest to people do is you write down your creature, you write down what eats it, you write down what they eat, you build your food web, you work out what happens if that creature's killed. If you've killed all the dragons and they were a natural part of your food web, something else is increasing in number somewhere else. And if they're increasing, you've got another problem somewhere else. And it's not just the dragons anymore. Something else has changed. Sorry, I could probably,
I could listen to you talk
this
about
is a real,
this is real for hours, Jenny. It's great.
So it's just one of those things that it does really kind of, it makes or breaks your world building.
Yeah.
How your fantasy creatures fit in makes or breaks it, I think.
But isn't that like the whole fantasy writers don't know what horses need and eat, and they can run and run and run all day? It's like that, but just like scaled up massively when it comes to the dragons.
Yeah, I'm a really horrible beta reader for things like that. I'm sorry, you doing what with that horse? Nope, dragon.
It's a very good thing to hear from one of your alpha readers, though. Just to know that I've got to make sure that the level of my stuff is really, really good on the ecology before I pass it over to Jenny. It's good to get a reminder. Lauren, is there anything else you think that people, you mentioned about the horses thing there, so did you want to touch on that as well? Because just in case people don't necessarily know what you mean by that.
Oh yeah, I can't remember who said it originally. I don't know if there's like a person that the quote can be attributed to, but it's something along the lines of fantasy writers use horses as the equivalent of cars if they're writing like a generic medieval style world where there's no like transport beyond literal horsepower. So they'll trek hundreds of kilometers every day. There's no stopping to rest the horses or feed them or let them drink. All horses are perfectly obedient, never bite, never refuse to move. They just go exactly where character A needs them to go, and that's that. Which is
Here to gallop.
yes, that's what it's there for. And anyone who has any passing knowledge of horses knows that that's just never going to happen. So I think it's a flaw, and it's quite rightly pointed out. But sometimes when you're writing fantasy and you're focusing on themes and character development and epic battles and all of those kind of emotions, that how people get from A to B is just kind of neglected. So yeah, that's what I meant by that comment.
I think that's a very good thing to extrapolate outwards when we're talking about these kinds of things as well. That yeah, you can put a magical whatever in there, but again, well,
just remember that it poops.
Exactly. Remember, it's not a car, and it needs to poop.
Yeah, not a car needs what do you call it? A slurry pile? Is that what
Something like that. It's a lot of poo. If you've got a big collection of fantasy animals, there's a lot of poo. There's a lot of feed and a lot of poo, and there's logistics of managing both of those.
Yeah, I'm really, really glad that in my current trilogy they're all spirits, so they don't actually eat and they don't actually poop, and they.
No, I'm aware you get away with that.
Yeah, I've given myself a cheat sheet for that.
But that's why it works, because they don't have to do that because of the way your dragons are built.
It's built into the logic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you take nothing
I get
else
around the
away,
eating thing by making mine reptilian, very clearly powered on a combination of the emotions, and they only need to eat every now and then. So they're working on the crocodilian level mechanism, but it's mentioned.
Yeah.
Hasn't eaten for months and months and months, needs to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So it needs to be somewhere.
So yeah, what we're saying, yeah, just if nothing else you take away from this panel, just think about where its waste goes, and you're halfway there. Yeah, good. Right, we'll leave it there then. We've got a few more bits to talk about. So we've got this. Yeah, we talked about sort of the science and the biological stuff. So thinking of that as maybe the homework that you need to do with dragons, and making sure that logic is internally consistent. What are some of the more interesting ways that you think that dragons could be used? Like maybe the way that you've used them and you think is very interesting, or ways that you might like to see explored a little bit more. Lauren, I know you touched earlier. You were saying that you're very pleased that dragons are no longer just big bad evil things that steal princesses and need to be slain. Are there any sort of areas you'd think, oh, that would be really interesting, I'd like to read more in this area, or think areas that you'd like to explore, maybe in future books?
Oh yeah. So next series, I've been like kind of planning out for like maybe 3 or 4 years now. Very excited about that. Taking a big leaf from what Jenny was saying about in terms of, well, if you have 50 dragons, how are you feeding them? What are the logistics? And instead of kind of glazing over that, really going into that in depth, and kind of looking at them, because I love, if you follow me on social media, I love animals, I love birds, I love bird watching, and kind of really taking, and like where the Dragon Spirit series takes my love of Studio Ghibli and nature and conservation and marries it with epic fantasy and dragons. The next one is going to be my love of birds and marrying that with dragons. So I'm gonna do my very first ever dragon rider fantasy, because I've never done that before. They've always been like part of the world, they've been gods, they've been very kind of like magic focused and magic first and very other. So I want to really get into a dragon rider fantasy where instead of you just have someone on the back of a dragon that kind of does nothing and looks cool, just like really think, how would that really work if it was a real animal? So I'm going to take a leaf from Jenny and just kind of like go on a tiny little tangent here. But if you don't know, there's a bird of prey called the Harris hawk, and it's one of the very few birds of prey species that actually hunts in essentially, like, there's a group of them, but there's the head hawk is always a matriarch, is always a big female. So one of the dragon species in this upcoming series, the dragon rider will just be on the female, and through that can control a group of males. And how would that work in like a war situation? Because you will have someone that has such dominance and air supremacy. And what would the trickle effects be with surrounding countries, with potential invaders, with resource management, distribution, and kind of like all of that. But it's going to be, all of the behaviors is going to be so rooted in real life ecosystems and behavior of animals and birds, and kind of how that interplays with each other. So that's something that I think
now.
Yeah, thank you. But that's something I think could be interesting. And, you know, like with birds, you have the males that are much more colorful and flamboyant and kind of, and whenever I've read like a dragon rider fantasy, it's just, okay, that's a white dragon, it looks cool. That's a black dragon, it looks cool. And that's kind of about it. And I really want to get into like the species and how that works, and you know what it means if you have a male versus a female, and what if they're breeding, what they have young, and kind of like how that kind of just the whole interconnectedness of it. So I guess it's kind of similar to like my whole nature vibes from before, but just in a much more in-depth way, I guess. So I really want to explore what it means to be able to ride a dragon and the far-reaching consequences of that, if that makes sense. I mean, that's what I'm going for. Whether I hit the mark, I don't know, but yeah, that's what I've been planning for a while.
I mean, it sounds amazing. I could see some eyes in this panel like light up as you were talking there as well. So I think you've already got a selection of readers if you ready and waiting for you. Jordan, is there anything that you'd like to sort of see done more with dragons?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go on. No, please.
I would love to see, and I'm sure it probably exists out there. I just haven't personally discovered it. I've seen a lot of dynamics with dragons where they are just like this remote creature that's just a monster to be killed, and I've seen dragons where they're like controlled by humans. But I would love to see some more fiction where like the dragons themselves are the rulers and the humans are like the caste system underneath them. I think that would be kind of a cool space to explore. I'd like to see some, you know, city-states lorded over by greedy dragons or that sort of thing.
Getting into D&D realms there, aren't we?
So yeah, it's interesting that you say that, sorry, Jordan, about having the dragons as rulers, because I say we've been talking a little bit about allegory and metaphor and things like that, and I think, you know, there's probably a lot to be said at the moment for people who are at the top of the chain with a lot of power versus everybody else who's at the bottom and doesn't have any. So yeah, that could be really interesting. Emma, can we come to you? Is there anything you'd like to see more done with dragons? You've already done a lot with them. Is there more to be done?
I'm sure there is. I'm at a weird point with mine where I don't have dragons planned for my next series, because I feel like I know I've not done everything. I just have not decided where to go next. But I can guarantee there's something somewhere. It's like where you're kind of groping around for an idea. And like I'm reminded of all the books that are on my list that have been mentioned that I've not read yet and need to read as well. Like just the ones that have come up in the course of this. I'm like, oh yeah. Just my TBR list is sitting judging me like.
I've got a piece of paper here getting longer as well.
Yeah, I feel like I'm like, must remember that for later. But most of those books, genuinely, I already own them. I have no one to blame but myself and my out of control reading list for not getting to them yet. So, like, I've really got my eye on like the Anthony Ryan series, and also Miss Percy's Pocket Guide as well. These books have been on my list for years. I've got no excuses. Yeah, as for what I'll do with dragons next, I'm going to surprise myself.
That's the best way. Just writing to surprise yourself is the best. Okay, Jenny, is there anything you'd like to see done more with dragons? Is there anything you'd like to do more with dragons? You've already done space dragons and other kinds of dragons. Is there anything else you'd want to do or see other people do? Apart from Paris Hawk hunting dragons, of course. I think we've got that coming.
I want to hug a dragon. I want to stroke a dragon. Obviously I've still got one book to finish, so of my dragons. I'm actually nearly finished another book that will probably shock people. That there isn't a dragon in it at all. There's a dragon flies, but there are no dragons. In fact, the only creatures of any dominance are insects. So, but that I'm anticipating probably duology, and then I'll probably get back to dragons. But I want to do more with the dragons at some point in the Black Hind world. So there are other books on my list to write in that world. There's at least 2 to 3 more books in that world that will at some point get written. But I kind of have itches to scratch of other books to get finished, and obviously I have to finish Gates. But yeah, ask me that question this time next year, and I'll probably have a list of dragons planned. But at this moment in time, my brain is so full of trying to finish off the ones I'm doing that for me, I've got to still stay in the headspace for the Gates dragons for now. And then I will worry about other dragons because I don't want to mess up my Gates ones. But I love the fact that there's so many different things. I love the cat dragons, the small dragons. I'd love a small, slightly vicious dragon. I'm sure they're out there somewhere, sort of gremlin-like dragon, causing all sorts of mischief and trouble around the place. There was something a bit like that in something I read recently. It wasn't a dragon. It had that sort of attitude. So I'd quite like to see a few more. Maybe mischievous. A lot of our dragons in fiction are either massive presences or they're kind of wild animals, but something almost fey-like, a few more fey-like dragons. A few more of those, I think. Just that, still other, but a little more tricky. I think I could do some tricky dragons.
Not only have we got some new ideas that we're talking about that we've thrown around.
I know, I'm now sitting here going, tricky dragons.
Exactly.
It's making me want a lap dragon.
Yeah. Like a hot water. Could you imagine like a hot water bottle but a dragon, and it just sits on your lap when you're cold, and then you don't? Yeah, that would be amazing. I have a question for everyone. Do you prefer dragons that are just like beasts and animals, or do you prefer the intelligent ones that can talk? Like if you had to choose one or the other, which do you prefer?
I love talking dragons. I love like the sinister, deep, terrible, scary voice dragon that's got the master plan that you've bumbled into.
Mm-hmm.
Emma?
Yeah, I'd probably just about go on that side. It's very, very close, but I would pick the intelligent dragon. Just about. I mean, it's a very close one because I like the wild dragons as well, and I feel like the intelligent dragons is something that can easily go like tip over into not quite working kind of thing. But yeah,
depends what you're using them for.
Yeah.
I know,
it depends on their role in the story.
Fair.
If you want the dragon to be integral, then how is it speaking? No, I know. Don't go down that road again. If you want, but I do think that there can be something even more fearsome about a creature you have no chance of communicating with, if you're using it in that aspect, than there is about one that maybe you could reason with the right words and the right treasure and the right rest. If there's no way of talking to it and it is just this primal massive beast, that is a very different aspect to the story to one that you could talk to. So I think they have their place. I think they all have their place in the right story.
Lauren, what about you? Seeing as you posed the question, I think you still got to answer it.
Oh no, I don't. I asked a question. I don't have to come up with an answer. I don't know. I quite. Yeah, I don't know. I was hoping that listening to you guys would help me make a decision, really, because it kind of boils down to what Jen said. It like, what is it for? Like, if it's a dragon that you could potentially face, then yes, I would like to be able to talk to it to maybe help it, appeal to its better nature and not be eaten. But if it's just like a wild force of nature, then there's something quite, I guess, kind of like primal. If you don't get eaten by it, it's like if you are with any animal and then it gains your trust and then you kind of develop that sort of bond, that's pretty awesome too. So Yeah, I don't know. I think I might lean maybe slightly towards the non-speaking type, but yeah, I like them all.
Okay, that's a fairly even split then, really.
Alex?
Oh no, I'm just hosting.
Yes.
Yeah. No.
Oh, you can't cop out of that one.
No. I think I might also lean towards the purely the non-talking kind of dragon. I think, as you say, it's a bit more challenging to confront and train. Obviously, I have a great love of both, but maybe the non-talking sort of one. I was thinking about dragons just generally in my life, and there was a book called Of Bone and Thunder by Chris Evans. And I looked it up for this just in case I needed to mention a dragon myself. And it's sort of a fantasy Vietnam War type thing, and there instead of helicopters they have dragons, and the depiction in that was they're quite animalistic, but it felt very visceral and sort of like you could touch them. It would be a bad idea to do that, but in my head is a good one as well. So yes, that's my one answer I'm giving as my duty as hosting. But you also can't go wrong with the talking dragon, I think.
Absolutely not. I like writing talking dragons, but I like the idea of reading both.
Yes. Well, I mean, certainly poetic rhyming dragons as well are always good.
He is a pain to write.
So we started with a little bit of what was your favorite thing about dragons. So the last question we've got was who would be the king of the dragons. So I'm thinking we could go with king of the dragons, or I'm thinking maybe we open this up to like what's your favorite depiction of a dragon, which I am going to also say, like, let's give a pass. Obviously your favorite depiction of a dragon is all the dragons that everybody here has written. Let's take that as a given. So outside of this group of lovely, wonderful, amazing writers, what's your favorite dragon depiction? Jordan, I might throw that to you first.
Well, I'd say if there's a king of dragons, you got to give Smaug his proper due, because I think that depiction of a dragon laid the groundwork for a lot of stuff that came after. And speaking of like the intelligent dragon with the deep, terrifying voice that lets you know, like, this is my horde and you messed up by coming here. I definitely love that. So I guess I would vote for Smaug.
Lauren, what about you? We can come back.
Yeah, it's hard. It's very hard.
Okay, Emma, do you have a favorite that you can share?
I was also going to say Smaug, purely because that probably was the first book with a dragon that I read. I say probably because before a certain, I mean, or maybe, I don't know. The only book I may have read before would have been a Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which technically has a dragon. But this is that's like the earliest fantasy book that I can remember reading anyway. But yeah, it's just something about that like archetype of like dragon, like sitting on a pile of treasure. Like obviously it came out of like myth and stuff like that. It goes back a long way, but I feel like that image is just sort of stuck and it's just iconic. And yeah, big terrifying dragon. If you mess with my treasure, just don't.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're picking like favorite fantasy things, the Tolkien versions are usually they're the best for a reason. Jenny, do you have a favorite? I feel like you're pondering this very deeply, so I feel you may.
Favorites are hard.
It's not going to be Smaug. I don't know. I think for me, my favorite dragon is obviously the Welsh dragon, the Mabinogion, the history behind that. I'm sorry, I go back pre-Smaug. So
that's fair.
It's the one I grew up with. I've got stuff all over my house covered in him. So I mean, it's on a deck chair out there. It's on things I've got down here. I've got books on my shelves covered in imagery of this same one iconic dragon. So I guess in that respect, that is my favorite dragon, personally. From literature, I like dragons a bit different. I actually really like ones that I know a lot of people aren't necessarily fans of. I like the grumpy, deformed messes of Robin Hobb's dragons.
Yes.
I love the imperfectness
Hmm.
of them and all their grumpy selfishness. Because I think that it represents a whole load of other aspects rather than the perfect terror or the perfect. Yeah, I like that they're fallible in that instance.
Lauren, can I come back to you, or
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, like Team Taglia is great. So yeah, I am so with you on that. I was just thinking, I don't really remember reading as a child where I came across a dragon, to be honest. I think my very first experience of like meeting a dragon, discovering what dragons were, is from the film Dragonheart, which was from the 90s. I want to say like maybe 97, 98 sort of time. And I think that is what kind of seared a love of dragons in my head. So I think in terms of influence, then Draco, which is the name of the dragon is given in Dragonheart, is probably up there, because yeah, that was influential, made me love the creatures, made me obsessed with them. It's a hyperfixation that's never gone away. And then in terms of like more recent dragons, it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but I really, really, really love Toothless. I genuinely,
He's up there.
yeah, I have several.
He's up there.
Yeah,
I have
Yeah, we all got a Toothless. There you go. Toothless sharing moment. Bonding.
Yeah, exactly. But like Toothless is very much dragon, very clearly dragon, has scales that can fly and breathe fire. But I think the behaviors are so molded on dogs and cats, and kind of like the love that we have for those animals, and the fact that they go beyond just an animal to a friend, to a companion, to the unconditional love that they can give you. I think and Toothless just looks really awesome. So I think I probably am going to say Toothless.
Yeah. Clearly a solid and popular choice.
Yeah, he's great, but I just feel like he's a cheap answer, because it's not, like a literary dragon or influential dragon or been around for hundreds of years. He's just
awesome
That
dragon.
absolutely wasn't the question. The question was, favorite. So I will have no one feeling bad about any of their choices. That's absolutely.
And I mean, the Pern dragons were the first ones I read in depth, and I read every single Pern book I could get out the library. Like, I read every one of them out of order, because it was whatever order they came into the library. They were the first book dragons, I suppose, I read in detail.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think that's probably like the favorite dragons. I feel is a good note to draw this to a close. Clearly, this is a rich
seems
topic.
To have the overall vote.
Yeah, and I think clearly go on forever on this one and pick more and more dragons that could be the favorite. So I just want to quickly say thank you to our panelists here. Loved having you all on. I'm so pleased to have got you talking about one of your favorite subjects. It's been really great to see the passion and fire, if you'll excuse the pun, in your eyes talking about dragons. So as we round this out, if I could just go around and get everybody to say where people can come find you, find your books. So again, just stick with tradition. Let's go clockwise. So Jenny, where can people find you and your books?
Pretty much under JE Hannaford on, I think, just about every social media, apart from Instagram, where I'm JE Book for some strange reason. And then you can get my books on Amazon or anywhere else you want to order them through, realistically. Or my website, you can get signed ones. I've got boxes of them next to me at the moment.
Perfect. Jordan, where can people find you and your stuff?
Kind of the same. You can go to jordanloyalshort.com. That'll have a good basis for finding me wherever, but I'm on pretty much all the social media platforms. Not really on Twitter very much these days, but you can find me wherever. If you want a dragon book, City and the Dragon's Eye, it's a fun kind of adventure. If you like Indiana Jones with like a bit more humor in it, and dragons. Otherwise, come find me wherever. I would love to talk to people about dragons.
Perfect. And Emma, what about you?
Yeah, my website, emmaladams.com. That's probably the best place to find me. I also sell books direct there, but I can also be found on like all retailers as well. I feel like I should have like brought some of my books next to me as a prop, but no, it wasn't quite that organized. Yeah, and also I'm not really on social media. I'm consistently. I'm more often on Blue Sky these days, but yeah, my website. I also have a Discord server. And so all the links
one of
from
your
my
books
website.
for you, just as you.
Oh, excellent. Oh, yeah. I do love the hardback.
It looks very, very lovely. So, highly recommended. As are all the books from all the people here. But, sorry. And Lauren, where can people find you and your books? Sorry, your books that I've got are slightly more out of reach than that one, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of like, there's a shiny one of mine up there. So I have a website also, llmacrae.com. You can find links to all of my socials there. So I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Goodreads. I have a Patreon too, if you're interested in kind of like more behind the scenes stuff and lore and author essays and that kind of thing. I sell my books on my website as well, ebooks, audiobooks, paperbacks, bundle deals, and merch, including pocket dragon pins. You can also grab the physical copies from the broken binding. So if you just go to the website, that's a good starting point to find anything else that you might be looking for.
Perfect. And please do go check everybody out. They are, as you've seen, all lovely people, want to talk about dragons, and they write amazing books. So that about wraps it up for this panel as part of Spotlight Indie's big indie weekend. There is still more to come, so come back and check out the next panel, which I believe is going to have me and Lauren on it again in 3 o'clock today. And it's going to be Only Rich People Write Books. So we talk about whether or not that's true. Spoiler, it isn't. So yeah, and there's loads of other, it's all been on the YouTube, so there's also going to be a couple of live things later, so you can check out the timetable there. Find us at spotlightindie.co.uk and at Spotlight Indie and all the socials, and we just love to shout about our lovely indie friends who write amazing books. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you again to my fantastic panelists, lovely dragony people. So please check out their stuff, and we will see you again soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.